Namaste, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And today I'm going to be discussing two verses from chapter 5. We're still discussing chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter on renunciation. And I'll read verses 27 and 28. It's impossible to separate those verses because it is just one sentence that goes through both these verses. So all translations, including Swamiji's, they always combine these two verses when they give the literal explanation for them. So I'll read them for you in Sanskrit first, and then I'll give you the English meaning. Sparshan kritva bahir bahyan chakshuhu chaiva antare bhruvoho प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तर चारिणौ यतेन्द्रिय मनोबुद्धिर मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणाः विगते च भयक्रोधयः सदा मुक्त एव सः. Now I will read the literal translation of the verse as written by Swami Kriyananda. The Muni, one for whom liberation is the sole purpose of life, controls his senses, mind, and intellect, removing himself from contact with them by neutralizing the currents of prana and apana in the spine, which manifest outwardly as inhalation and exhalation in the nostrils. He fixes his gaze in the forehead at a point midway between the eyebrows, thereby converting the dual current of physical vision into the single omniscient spiritual eye. Such a one attains complete emancipation. I was quite happy to pick this verse for today because I think 2 or 3 weeks ago I discussed verse 29 from chapter 4, which addressed a very similar idea of neutralizing the currents of prana and apana. And I was feeling very guilty for that class because I felt I could barely scratch the surface of what Krishna was talking about. So I'm not sure how much I can do in this class, but I get now 20 extra minutes to talk about it. And this verse is even different from that one, because Krishna gets very specific in this verse. He's actually making reference to a technique of controlling and working with the energies within, of meditating. Later on in the Gita, we are going to look at the entire chapter on meditation and that inner communion. So there we will discuss some of these ideas even more. But in this particular verse, again, Krishna is talking about neutralizing the currents of prana and apana. And we briefly touched upon this, and here he is giving us some specific tips and techniques on how to do that. So I'm hoping perhaps in this class we will get a little experiential and try some of those things that Krishna is talking about. We will see. First, to start with what Krishna refers to in this verse. This idea of shutting ourselves from any external contact, focusing at the spiritual eye, and Krishna is very, very specific, at the point between the eyebrows in your forehead. He's being very specific in how he describes the process of meditation to us. And then he says, this person who wants to be liberated, who wants to detach himself from duality, from all the things. In fact, in the Sanskrit verse, he talks about Muni who wants to liberate himself from anger and fear. When somebody is trying to liberate themselves from all these emotions of duality, they want to neutralize the currents of prana and apana as they express in their physical body. And he says this can be done even through one's nostrils. Of course, there are many practices. I shouldn't say many. There are various levels in which this practice can be performed, at the grossest to subtler and subtler levels. And again, if you have not guessed so far, one of the techniques that we are referring to through this verse of neutralizing the currents is the technique of Kriya Yoga. And that's why I said I'm happy to be doing this verse again, because the last time we tried to explain the reference to Kriya Yoga in Bhagavad Gita, I don't think I was able to get as deep as I wanted to. So in this class also, I will discuss a little more on how these currents manifest in our body, in our breath, and how the practice of Kriya Yoga is a scientific technique given to us through Babaji, through Krishna, and all these great gurus in order to work with ourselves, in order to be able to intelligently neutralize those currents, pull them back into the deep spine, or what we call Sushumna, the deep inner channel through which Kundalini energy can flow. Now, let's start by talking about the point between the eyebrows, because Krishna is making a very direct reference to it, and he's asking the yogi to focus his attention at this point. Now, there's a lot that could be said about this, about the scientific aspect of this, which I'm not going to in this class. I mean, you can easily find it on the internet. I've spoken about it also in some other classes. That's not the point of this series. Essentially, what it is the prefrontal lobe of the brain, how this particular part of the brain is actually the one that pushes our evolution forward. The prefrontal lobe and the limbic region of the brain are two opposing poles, so to speak. The prefrontal lobe at this point, this entire region of the brain, is connected with happiness, how we experience joy. It is a center of peace and harmony, how we identify with things larger than ourselves, how we identify as a part of something much bigger, whether it's a family, a country, this entire world, this universe. And in essence, the complete evolution of that prefrontal lobe is identity with all of creation, with every single atom of creation, where we can feel our own consciousness pervading all through it. And that's what we are trying to do by awakening the energy in this part of the brain. And there's a lot of science to it, like I said, which I don't need to go into in this particular class. But there are some interesting points that Swami Kriyananda makes here, because there's more metaphysics and practical aspects of using this particular point in meditation. To start with, Swami Kriyananda talks about the anatomy of the human body itself. And the things that Krishna is talking about here, both about neutralizing the currents through the nostrils and focusing here in the prefrontal lobe, it is worth mentioning that human beings have a specific anatomy that make this possible. Of course, hopefully this is not controversial for some of you. Human beings are the most evolved of all creatures on this planet. Human beings have a body, as Yoganandaji put it, that is capable of God realization. Our nervous system is evolved, as he said, to receive the infinite. So human beings, and this is what the Christian Bible refers to when it talks about the man being made as an image of God. What that means is that the human body has the inherent capability to experience divinity, whereas the physical vehicles used by many other creatures, whether it's dogs or cats or horses or monkeys or whatever they are, their nervous system cannot receive that infinite. They are not capable of expanding their awareness to the extent to which a human person can. Now, Swami Kriyananda talks about this particular point itself, the prefrontal lobe of the brain, how it is different in a human being. Again, not to go into brain chemistry or the science of it, he talks about how pretty much in all creatures, even chimpanzees or apes, the forehead is receding. It goes like this. And if you were to look farther back in evolution, if you think of reptiles like snakes or fishes or lizards, birds, they almost don't have foreheads. A snake or a lizard, reptiles just have like a flat, like a face that just goes backward. They're just completely being pulled into their instincts, and they function from the physical plane. And when you see higher creatures, mammals, especially creatures such as dogs or cats and monkeys, and you can even look at a picture of a dog or cat if you want to see what I'm exactly describing here, because it's not something we may often notice, but they have an extremely receding forehead. Their forehead goes back, whereas in a human being, the forehead goes up. The human face itself is directed in this way, and that is energetically reflecting the subtle reality that human beings have a lot more conscious choice in how we direct our energies. A few years ago, I was teaching a class on chakras, And somebody asked me this question, which I should have expected. Apparently, this is one of the common questions that you get when you talk about the chakras and subtle energy and all of this. And they asked, do dogs have chakras? And where I live here in the United States, pets are part of family. Oftentimes people don't necessarily see them as anything different. And I'm not sure what answer I gave, but I certainly had not researched or studied that subject before the class. But then I went home, and the first thing I did was I looked up on the internet to see if there's any information on dogs having chakras. I know Master or Swamiji had not explicitly discussed or spoken on this topic. And my God, I was surprised to see all the plethora of information that came on my screen, all the different chakra diagrams of different breeds of dogs, and where their navel chakra is located, where their prefrontal lobe, or where their 7 chakras located. Now, I have no way to verify or corroborate any of that information. It's all fascinating. Is it true? It could be. There's no way for me to know, like I said. But it was interesting for me to think about it. Think about the fact that animals also likely have an astral body. Not likely, animals have an astral body, and likely that astral body also has energetic centers, because they also have the same nerve plexus in the physical body as humans do. They also have a similar endocrine system like humans do. These are all physical reflections of the subtle energies of the chakras. So in order to understand them on a subtle level, one can easily imagine that animals also have chakras. And if they do, you can think of a cat or a dog or a monkey or a snake's third chakra, the spiritual eye, the kutastha that we are talking about. And you can easily see from their physical manifestation that it is different. It is not as evolved as a human being's kutastha is. And this is an important point, because kutastha, this particular point that we are focusing on, what does it energetically represent? I don't even need to discuss the 6th chakra itself, but that doorway to Christ consciousness, as Larry Marshall writes in many of his writings and letters, this kutastha is the presence of that cosmic consciousness of Christ consciousness in the atom of every creation. So if there is one point in our human body where there is this specific doorway to connect with the divine, that is right here at this point. That is that seed of divine consciousness that has become individual and manifested itself in this expression that I'm calling this physical body. Now, that consciousness first became a thought, and then it became an energy. It magnetized an astral body, and then eventually it was able to gain this physical vehicle, and then it can live a period of 80, 90 years on this plane before the physical vehicle is let go. But still that energy, that astral form remains. And that form continues to express itself, continues to evolve in its own way, in many cases, to find another body, another physical vehicle to express that energy. Now, all this explanation is for us to reflect on what this center in our body means, what this particular point is energetically representing for all of us. In meditation, we are reaching out to that door of Christ consciousness. We are trying to connect with that seed of the divine that is present within us, that seed of individuality. In Sanskrit, we call this center Agnya. Agnya simply means, one of the literal translations of the word is command. Another literal translation you could think of is will. This is the center of will in the body, but will not in the sense of trying to make things happen in this world, but will in that sense of that individual expression, that desire or aspiration that is specific to us. Our own connection with the divine, that is present as a seed at this point in the body. So it is obviously not surprising that Krishna is asking us to direct all our energies toward this point. Now, the other thing, which is what I want to also talk about and perhaps try some experiences today with all of you, is this idea of neutralizing the two currents, prana and apana. And Krishna is very specific in how he describes it. I'm going to read this commentary once again. And the reason why I'm saying that is oftentimes this verse, or even the verse 29 in chapter 4, most translators translate it as simply the practice of nadi shodhanam, or alternate nostril breathing, saying Krishna is just recommending a pranayam technique to Arjuna. But I think it's a lot more than that. A simple pranayam technique wouldn't be presented by an avatar as the key to salvation. So there's a clue there. And it's not to say that the alternate nostril breathing technique is not powerful, but it is a hard sell to believe that that alone can lead one to salvation or free you from all fear and suffering, which is what Krishna is promising in this verse. As he says, neutralizing the currents of prana and apana in the spine, which manifest outwardly as inhalation and exhalation in the nostril. Now, again, I'm not going to go too deep into this topic because there's a lot that could be said. The two currents of Ida and Pingala, which are the subtle energetic flows that are always happening in our body, they reflect as the physical breath. And prana and apana, as we discussed in the previous episode on this topic as well, are flows of energies in these two subtle astral channels in our own spine. And if you have seen pictures of this, which I'm sure all of you have, even if you don't remember or you don't think you have, these two channels are often represented as two serpents that are coiling like this. They intersect and separate from each other. So there are a lot of representations in spirituality of this picture, oftentimes even without knowing what it actually represents. But that is a representation of the flow of prana and apana, of the energy in Ida and Pingala in our own astral body. And between the fifth and the sixth chakras here, prana and apana flow in this way. The prana flows in the Ida in the left nostril, and apana flows through the Pingala in the right nostril. So, in that sense, because the physical breath is something that we can more easily control than any other subtle aspect of this flow of energy, we often can and do work with the flow of breath in the nostrils in order to neutralize these currents. And Swami Kriyananda actually talks highly about alternate nostril breathing, not just in the Gita commentary, but also in other places and other writings. And apparently Yogananda also did. In fact, Swami, in one of his writings I was looking up yesterday, he said he even saw Master Yoganandaji practice alternate nostril breathing. And Swamiji makes a big deal out of it because it is not by accident or without reason that an avatar would practice a technique like that. So the technique itself has a lot of potential. It is in fact a great technique. And it does work, like Swamiji says here, by controlling the flow of breath in each nostril, we can actually control the flow of energy in Ida and Pingala. So there is a way to manipulate this energy that is flowing in our subtle body by breathing through alternate nostrils, by controlling that breath. Now, I'm going to assume that all of you know at least or have an idea of what alternate nostril breathing is. And as part of this morning, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you because I'm going to go to a subtler technique of working with the Ida and Pingala in a few minutes. But before that, let's review what alternate nostril breathing is and try to practice it the way, in the light of what Krishna is explaining to Arjuna in this particular verse. So if you are watching this in your own home, find a seat that is comfortable for you and try to sit with a neutral, relaxed spine. Traditionally, we use a mudra like this in order to perform alternate nostril breathing. I'm sure there's an energetic relationship and a meaning to why we do that. So I would recommend you to use such a mudra as well, if you're able to. You just tuck these two fingers in and hold the last two fingers out and the thumb also out. So the way we perform alternate nostril breathing is we close one nostril, breathe through the other nostril, we hold that breath and exhale through the other nostril. So if you're breathing through the left nostril, we breathe, let's say, for a count of 6. We hold the breath for a count of 6 and we exhale through the right nostril for the count of 6. And then we start breathing through the right nostril again for that same count, hold the breath and we exhale through the left. So let's try it together. And as we do it, the one thing why I wanted to practice this with all of you today morning is let's try to practice the explicit instructions of Krishna in performing this technique, which is as you inhale, as you draw that energy, let's focus at the spiritual eye. In fact, even these two fingers pointing there almost energetically are drawing us up to focus that attention at the spiritual eye. Oftentimes in India, I've seen a lot of people practice alternate nostril breathing, but their eyes would be wide open and relating to the world around. And in this verse, Krishna is very specific. Not only is he asking us to focus at the spiritual eye, he's saying, shut out all external engagement when you're trying to practice this technique. So let's try that. Since you may be familiar already with this technique, let's close your eyes, and I will continue speaking to guide you in this. So if you're able to practice the mudra with your right hand, now let's first close the right nostril and breathe through the left for a count of about 6. Hold that breath at the top, closing both nostrils. And now exhale through the right. At the end of the exhalation, no need to hold the breath again. Start inhaling through the right this time. Hold that breath again on top. And exhale through the left. Now, that exercise was rather brief for me to ask you what you felt, but certainly try this. In fact, in the practice of Sandhya, or the daily worships, worship and ritual, the daily ritual worship that Brahmins do with the Gayatri mantra, the practice of Nadi Shodhanam, or the alternate nostril breathing, is done almost 3 times a day in most cases, because this particular practice, and it is in fact done in conjunction with the Gayatri mantra, and that also I found very interesting and helpful. I'm not going to get into the details of it right now, but you could try that as well. And all these techniques that we perform, that the technique of yoga gives us, have a lot of deep spiritual meaning. And this particular technique is one of the highest pranayams. Now, moving on, as Swamiji explains in this verse, this is one of the ways in which this particular verse can be interpreted. But there is certainly deeper and subtler ways of performing what Krishna is asking us to, of neutralizing the Ida and Pingala. Like I said, Kriya Yoga in itself is that technique. Kriya Yoga is a technique of directly working with the energies, not needing to control the flow in the nostrils, but actually tuning into the deep spine and getting a handle on that flow of energy in Ida and Pingala. In fact, in this particular passage in the commentary for this verse, Swami talks about when we are tuned in on a much, much subtler level, the flow of prana in the subtle nadi Ida can be felt as a cold current that is rising up from the base of the spine up to the spiritual eye with every inhalation. And the flow of apana through the pingala, if the yogi is able to be sensitive enough, I'm talking about yogi the way Krishna is saying, but I'm talking about all of us here. If we are able to calm ourselves, feel deep energetic awareness, and we are able to tune into that subtle flow, during the exhalation we can feel this flow of apana, this flow in the pingala nadi as a very fine warm current that is flowing downward from the spiritual eye to the base of the spine. So that experience of the cold and the warm currents is a more direct way of being able to work with these energies, and that's in fact what we do in the practice of Kriya Yoga. Now, before I end today morning's satsang, I want to guide you in another technique. I presume not everybody watching this talk or following this may be practicing Kriya Yoga technique or already initiated. So I'm going to describe and guide us in something very similar that Swamiji gives us as an exercise in the commentary for this verse, which interestingly enough, Master Paramhansa Yogananda ji called it baby Kriya. So now we'll practice it together the way Krishna is talking about it. We are going to focus on the subtle flow of prana and apana and of neutralizing these currents, but we are not going to do that by using fingers or by controlling the flow in our nostrils. We are going to feel the flow of air in our nostrils, but we are going to gently bring that to one pointed focus as the one breath, and we are going to try to draw that breath deep into our spine, closer and closer into our spine. Those of you who are familiar with the path of Kriya Yoga or of Yogananda's teachings know this to be the technique of Hong Sau, which is the simple technique of observing one's breath. And as Swamiji explains in this commentary, what Krishna is talking about can also be practiced as part of the Hong Sau technique. It is that same pranayam that we do when we try to calm our breath and our mind by the practice of observing the breath. So that's what I want to briefly guide you in before we end the class for today. So again, take a comfortable posture with relaxed and neutral spine. And let's focus our gaze at the spiritual eye, at the Kutastha. And now we are going to observe the flow of breath in our body, the physical breath, and notice all the physical manifestations of it, the gentle movement of the belly as you inhale and exhale, a slight expansion perhaps in the chest, the flow of air in the nostrils. Let's become aware of all these different physical sensations of the flow of air in our body. Now, as you breathe in and out, we are going to follow the inhalation and exhalation by mentally chanting Hong Sau, which is the mantra that Yogananda ji gave us. With inhalation, we mentally chant Hong, and with exhalation, we mentally chant Sau. Now, as we do that today morning, I want you to imagine or visualize this flow of breath as that flow of current in the spine. With every inhalation, without controlling it in any way, we are simply observing the natural flow of that breath. Feel that inhalation and visualize it as a flow of that energy, as that cold current of prana rising up the spine from the coccyx center through the different chakras, rising up to the Kutastha or the spiritual eye at the point between the eyebrows. And similarly with the exhalation, as you mentally chant Sau, feel that breath as a subtle warm current flowing in the Pingala channel from the spiritual eye to the base of the spine. The gaze is always at the spiritual eye. It can be tempting to move the gaze up and down as you do the visualization, but resist yourself from doing that. That does not help the practice. The gaze is always centered at the spiritual eye, but the awareness is moving up and down the spine as you feel that flow of energy. And now the thing I want to call your attention to is as you draw that breath deeper and deeper into the spine, as the breath calms down and you feel it deeper in your own center, you will realize, if you focus in your nostrils, that the flow of air is being felt higher up in the nostril. Again, this is too brief of practice to demonstrate and experience all of this, but if you practice it for a longer period of time at your own leisure, you will notice that as we are calmer, as we go deeper in meditation, we start feeling that flow of air higher up in our nostrils. And that is the point that Krishna is referring to here. These currents of prana and apana in Ida and Pingala can be neutralized also by drawing the breath deeper into the spine. And by doing that, that energy naturally starts shifting closer and closer to that point between the eyebrows. And this is a subtler way of practicing this teaching that Krishna is talking about, subtler even than alternate nostril breathing, where we can draw that breath within and develop the awareness of the energy. Now, of course, the subtlest and the subtlest way that is available for us to practice this technique is the actual practice of Kriya Yoga itself, which obviously I cannot go into much depth in this video. It is received through an initiation from the Guru himself. So that's not something that I'm going to talk about in this particular webinar. I do have another series on Kriya Yoga if you're interested to learn more about it. But certainly try these two techniques, both the Nadi Shodhanam or the alternate nostril breathing, and this way of practicing the Hong Sa technique, of the simple practice of mindfulness and observing the breath, but with deep awareness in the spine and the flows of energy. And if you have any experiences or thoughts from that practice, do let me know. I'll see you next week again with another verse from the Gita. Until then, God bless you all.